Jake Morrison looked out the window of the transport ship as they came close to the huge space station. The station was bigger than any city on Earth. It had tall towers and spinning rings that went around and around in space. Lights blinked on and off all over it like stars. This was the Galactic Senate Station, and Jake was going there as the first human ambassador ever. His wife Lisa sat next to him, holding their 8-year-old daughter Katie on her lap. Katie had her face pressed against the window, watching everything. With big eyes, her mouth was open in wonder as she saw ships from different worlds coming and going from the station. "Look, Daddy," Katie said, pointing at a ship that looked like a giant crystal. "That one is so pretty. It's all sparkly." Jake smiled but felt worried. The other alien races had been very clear that they thought humans were too emotional and weak to join their group. Bringing a child to such an important meeting would not help their case. But Lisa had insisted that families stick together, and Jake could never say no to his wife. "Remember what we talked about, Katie," Lisa said softly. "You need to be very good while Daddy is in his meetings. Can you do that for us?" Katie nodded her head up and down very fast. "I promise, Mommy. I'll be the best girl ever." The ship docked with a loud clang that made Katie jump. Soon they were walking through long hallways with very high ceilings. The walls were made of some kind of metal that changed colors as they walked by. Other beings walked past them, some tall and thin, some short and round, some that looked like they were made of rocks. A robot came up to them. It was about as tall as Jake and had 4 arms and a screen for a face. "Welcome to Galactic Senate Station," it said in a voice that sounded like a computer. "I am Guide Unit 67. I will show you to your rooms." Katie ran up to the robot and looked up at its screen face. "Hi, I'm Katie. What's your name?" The robot screen flickered for a second. "I am designated Zix7 Small Human." "That's a funny name," Katie said with a big smile. "Can I call you Zix?" "That would be acceptable," the robot said. Jake noticed that its voice sounded a little different now, almost warmer. They followed Zix through more hallways until they reached a set of rooms. The doors opened by themselves as they got close. Inside, everything was very clean and white. The furniture looked strange. Some chairs were too big, some too small, and some were shaped for bodies that were not human at all. "These are your quarters," Zix explained. "The young human will stay here while Ambassador Morrison attends meetings." Just then, a tall, thin alien walked up to them. It had blue skin and 4 eyes arranged in a square on its face. Its arms were very long and had too many joints. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind blowing through trees. "So," the alien said, looking down at them, "the humans have arrived, and they brought their offspring to a diplomatic meeting." The way it said, "offspring," made it sound like a bad thing. Jake stood up straighter. "I am Ambassador Jake Morrison, representing Earth and all human colonies. This is my family." The alien's 4 eyes all blinked at different times, which looked very strange. "I am Krelvox of the Zephyrian Empire. We have heard much about humans. Your reputation for emotional decision-making precedes you." Katie tugged on her father's sleeve. "Daddy, why does he have so many eyes? Can he see 4 times better than us?" Krelvox made a sound like a snake hissing. "The child asks questions without being spoken to. Very typical of your species, I am told." Lisa put her hand on Katie's shoulder and pulled her close. "She's just curious. Children ask questions because they want to learn. Perhaps that is the problem," Krelvox said. "In civilized species, the young are taught proper behavior before they are allowed in public." Jake felt his face get hot with anger, but he tried to stay calm. "We believe that children learn best by experiencing the world around them." "How primitive," Krelvox said, then walked away without saying goodbye. Katie looked confused. Did I do something wrong, Daddy? Jake knelt down so he was at her eye level. No, sweetheart, you didn't do anything wrong. Some people just think differently than we do. After they got settled in their rooms, Jake had to go to his first meeting. Lisa decided to explore the station with Katie and Zix, who had offered to be their guide. As they walked through the halls, Katie asked Zix millions of questions about everything they saw. Why do those lights change colors? Katie asked, pointing at some panels on the wall. They respond to the emotional states of beings who pass by, Zix explained. Red means anger, blue means calm, green means curiosity. Katie stopped walking and stared at a panel that was flashing bright green. It's green right now. That means I'm curious, right? Correct, small human. This is so cool, Katie said, jumping up and down. The panel flashed even brighter green. They passed a group of aliens that looked like giant crystals walking on legs. These were Vorthans, Zix explained. One of them stopped and spoke in a voice that sounded like music. What? Not very pretty music. A human child, the crystal being said. Its voice made the walls vibrate a little. How strange that they would bring their young to such an important gathering. High resonance thrum, Zix said. May I present Katie Morrison, daughter of Ambassador. Morrison. The crystal being's body flashed different colors. The young one's thought patterns are very chaotic, very disorganized, not at all like proper thinking. Katie tilted her head to one side. Your voice makes the walls shake. That's really neat. How do you do that? High resonance thrums colors. Became more dim. The child asks personal questions. Most improper. As they continued their tour, Katie noticed that many of the aliens stared at her and whispered to each other. Some pointed at her with whatever they used for hands. She could tell they were talking about her, even though she couldn't understand their languages. Zix, Katie said quietly, why do they all look at me like that? Zix's screen face showed what might have been a frown. Many beings here have never seen a human child before. They find it strange that your parents brought you to such an important meeting. But why is that strange? Katie asked. Families should stick together. Not all species think the same way about family as humans do, Zix explained. That evening, Jake came back from his meetings looking tired and worried. Lisa could tell that things had not gone well. How did it go? She asked while Katie played with some toys in the corner. Jake sat down heavily in one of the strange chairs. Not good. They think we're too emotional and unpredictable. And bringing Katie just made it worse. Every alien I talked to mentioned it. Lisa sat down next to him. Maybe they'll understand once they get to know us better. I hope so, Jake said, but he didn't sound very sure. Katie looked up from her toys. Daddy, are you sad? Jake tried to smile. Just a little tired, sweetheart. Katie ran over and gave him a big hug. Don't worry, Daddy. I'll try extra hard to be good so they'll like humans. Jake hugged her back, wishing it was that simple. Outside their window, the stars twinkled, like diamonds against the black of space. Somewhere out there was Earth, their home, depending on him to make friends with aliens who thought humans were too childish for the galaxy. But as he held his daughter, Jake remembered why humans had made it this far in the first place. They never gave up, and they always had hope. Tomorrow would be another day, and maybe things would get better. The next morning, Katie woke up early and found Zix waiting outside their door. The robot had become her favorite friend on the station. He never got tired of her questions and always answered them in ways she could understand. Good morning. Zix, Katie said, bouncing on her toes. Can we explore more of the station today? If your parents give permission, small human, Zix replied. His screen face showed a smiley symbol. Lisa came out of their room carrying a cup of coffee that smelled different from Earth coffee. Good morning, you two. Jake already left for more meetings. I suppose we could do some more exploring. They walked through parts of the station Katie hadn't seen before. Some areas were very busy with aliens rushing back and forth. Other parts were quiet and empty. Katie liked the quiet parts better because she could hear her footsteps echo off. The walls. Zix, what's down there? Katie asked, pointing to a hallway that sloped downward. Those are the lower levels, Zix explained. Most beings do not go there. It is mainly storage in old sections that are no longer used. Can we go look? Katie asked, her eyes bright with curiosity. I suppose there would be no harm, Zix said after thinking for a moment. They walked down the sloping hallway. The walls. Here looked older and different from the shiny ones upstairs. The lights were dimmer, too. Katie could hear strange humming sounds coming from behind the walls. This place feels old, Katie said in a whisper. They turned a corner and found themselves in front of a big door that was glowing blue. Next to the door was a window, and through it Katie could see something amazing. Oh, wow, she said, pressing her face against the window. What is that? Inside the room was something that looked like a giant puzzle made of floating shapes. The shapes were different colors, and they moved slowly around each other in patterns. Some were like cubes, some like balls, and some were shapes Katie had never seen before. Lines of light connected them all together. That is the ancient chamber, Zix said. It has been here since before the station was built. Just then, a woman walked up behind them. She had brown hair and kind eyes, and she was carrying a tablet computer. Oh, the woman said when she saw them. I didn't expect to find anyone down. Here, she smiled at Katie. I'm Dr. Elena Rodriguez. I study old things from space. I'm Katie, Katie said right away. This is my mom Lisa and my friend Zix. What is that thing in there? Dr. Rodriguez knelt down to Katie's level. That's a very old puzzle that was left behind by people who lived a long, long time ago. We call them the precursors because they came before everyone else. Can we go inside and look at it? Katie asked. I'm afraid not, Dr. Rodriguez said. The door has been locked for thousands of years. No one knows how to open it. But I can see through the window, Katie said. Why can't we just break the glass? Dr. Rodriguez laughed. It's not really glass, sweetie. It's an energy barrier. That's stronger than any material we know. Many very smart people have tried to get inside, but no one has ever figured out how. Katie stared at the puzzle through the window. The floating shapes seemed to dance with each other, making patterns that almost made sense, but not quite. It's beautiful, she said softly. Yes, it is, Dr. Rodriguez agreed. Would you like to know more about it? Katie nodded eagerly, so Dr. Rodriguez sat down on the floor next to the window and began to explain. The puzzle has been here for over 3,000 years. Every race in the galaxy has sent their best scientists to study it. Some people think it's a test, and if we solve it, we'll learn amazing secrets. What kind of secrets? Katie asked. Maybe how to travel faster through space, or how to make new kinds of energy, or even how to talk to the precursors if they're still alive somewhere. Katie watched the shapes move around each other. Have you tried to solve it? For 5 years now, Dr. Rodriguez said with a sigh. But I'm not the first. There's an alien named Deep Thought Xeris who has been working on it for 40 years. 40 years is a really long time, Katie said. He must be very patient. He is. The Mentori people are known for their patience and their big brains. If anyone can solve it, it should be him. Katie pressed her hands against the window. Can I watch it for a while? Of course, Dr. Rodriguez said. Just don't touch anything that glows. While Katie watched the puzzle, Dr. Rodriguez and Lisa talked about Earth and what it was like to live there. Katie wasn't really listening because she was too busy watching the shapes. She noticed that some of them seemed to respond when she moved her head, as if they could see her watching them. "That's funny," Katie said to herself. "It's like they know I'm here." After a while, they went back upstairs to meet Jake for lunch. He was sitting with a man in a fancy uniform who looked upset about something. "Jake, this is getting out of hand," the man was saying as they walked up. "Every delegate I talk to mentions your daughter. They think we're not serious about joining the Galactic community." Jake stood up when he saw his family. "Lisa, Katie, this is Senator Carl Johnson from the Colonial Council." Senator Johnson shook Lisa's hand, but barely looked at Katie. "Mrs. Morrison, with all due respect, bringing a child to these negotiations was a mistake. The aliens already think we're too emotional and immature. Having a little girl running around the station just proves their point." Katie could tell that the man didn't like her, even though she had never done anything to him. She moved closer to her mother. "Senator," Lisa said in a voice that was very calm, but also very cold, "my daughter is a member of this family, and families stick together." "This isn't about family," Senator Johnson said. "This is about the future of humanity in space. Do you know what the Zephyrian ambassador said to me this morning? He said that a species that can't control their young shouldn't be trusted with galactic responsibilities." Jake's face turned red. "Katie is not out of control. She's a perfectly normal 8-year-old girl." "That's exactly the problem," Senator Johnson said. "Normal human behavior looks like chaos to these aliens. They've evolved past things like curiosity and wonder. They see those traits as weaknesses." Katie didn't understand all the big words, but she understood that the man thought she was a problem. She looked down at her feet and felt sad. Dr. Rodriguez, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. "Actually, Senator, that might not be entirely true. I've been studying alien psychology for years, and I think there might be some advantages to human emotional development that we haven't considered." "Like what?" Senator Johnson asked in a voice that suggested he didn't believe her. "Well, human children develop neural pathways that allow for creative and intuitive thinking in ways that most alien species have evolved away from. Their brains are still growing and making new connections. That kind of flexibility might be exactly what's needed for certain types of problems." "You're talking about the puzzle," Lisa said. Dr. Rodriguez nodded. "Among other things. The precursor puzzle has stumped the galaxy's greatest minds for thousands of years. Maybe it requires a different kind of thinking altogether." Senator Johnson rolled his eyes. "Are you seriously suggesting that an 8-year-old human child could solve something that beings with brains 10 times larger than ours can't figure out?" "I'm not suggesting anything," Dr. Rodriguez said. "I'm just saying that different types of intelligence might be useful for different types of problems." Katie looked up at Dr. Rodriguez with admiration. She was the first adult who had suggested that being a kid might actually be good for something important. That afternoon, while Jake went to more meetings and Senator Johnson complained to anyone who would listen, Katie went back down to the ancient chamber with Zix and her mother. Dr. Rodriguez was there again, staring at her tablet and making notes. "Hi, Dr. Rodriguez," Katie said. "Can I watch the puzzle some more?" "Of course, sweetie. I was just reviewing some old research notes. Maybe fresh eyes will see something I've missed." Katie sat down in front of the window and watched the shapes move. This time she paid attention to different things. She noticed that the shapes seemed to speed up and slow down in patterns, like music. She also noticed that some of the shapes seemed happy and some seemed sad, though she couldn't explain how she knew that. "Dr. Rodriguez," Katie said after a while, "do the shapes have feelings?" Dr. Rodriguez looked up from her tablet. "What makes you ask that? Some of them seem happy and some seem sad. And when the happy ones get close to the sad ones get happy too." Dr. Rodriguez came over and knelt down next to Katie. "Show me what you mean." Katie pointed to a blue cube that was moving slowly by itself. See that one? It's lonely. But watch what happens when the yellow ball comes over to it. As they watched, a yellow sphere drifted toward the blue cube. When they got close to each other, both shapes began to glow brighter and move faster. Interesting, Dr. Rodriguez said, making notes on her tablet. I've been thinking of the shapes as mathematical objects, but you're seeing them as emotional entities. What's emotional entities? Katie asked. Things that have feelings, like you and me. Katie nodded. Everything has feelings if you know how to look. Dr. Rodriguez stared at Katie for a long moment, then looked back at the puzzle. For the first time in 5 years, she wondered if she had been approaching the whole problem wrong. Over the next few days, Katie spent more and more time watching the puzzle in the ancient chamber. Zix would take her there every morning after breakfast, and Dr. Rodriguez was always happy to see them. Katie's mother usually came along too, bringing work to do on her tablet while Katie studied the floating shapes. Zix, Katie said one morning, do you think the shapes can see me? Zix's screen face showed a thinking symbol. My sensors cannot detect any visual apparatus on the objects. Small human. Why do you ask? Because they change when I look at them. Watch. Katie moved from one side of the window to the other. As she did, several of the shapes seemed to turn toward her, even though they didn't have eyes or faces. That is very interesting, Zix said, recording everything with his built-in cameras. I will analyze this behavior pattern. Dr. Rodriguez looked up from her work. Katie, you might be onto something. What else have you noticed? Katie pressed her hands against the energy barrier that covered the window. The red shapes are angry about something. The blue ones are sad. The green ones are excited. And the purple ones are scared. How can you tell? Dr. Rodriguez asked. The same way I can tell when you're worried about something, Katie said. Your face doesn't change much, but your eyes do. The shapes don't have eyes, but they move differently when they feel different things. Dr. Rodriguez made more notes. In all her years of study, she had never thought to analyze the shape's emotional states. Most alien scientists didn't even believe in emotions the way humans did. That afternoon, they had a visitor in the ancient chamber. Deep Thought Xeris arrived with 2 assistants and several pieces of equipment that looked very complicated. He was a menthari, which meant he looked like a tall gray person with a very big head and long, thin fingers. His brain was 3 times larger than a human brain. Dr. Rodriguez, he said in a voice that sounded very tired, I understand you have been allowing a human child to observe the precursor artifact. That's correct, Dr. Rodriguez said politely. Katie has made some interesting observations. Deep Thought Xeris looked at Katie like she was a bug. A child's observations are not scientific data. I have been studying this puzzle for 40 standard years. I have run over 10 million calculations and tested every mathematical theory known to galactic science. Katie looked up at the tall alien. Have you tried asking the shapes what they want? Deep Thought Xeris blinked his large black eyes. Asking them? The objects are not alive, child. They are constructs of energy and matter arranged in complex patterns. But they have feelings, Katie said simply. If you watched them for a while, you'd see it too. One of Deep Thought Xeris's assistants whispered something in their language. Deep Thought Xeris made a sound like a sigh. The child demonstrates typical human anthropomorphism, assigning emotional characteristics to non-emotional objects. This is why human psychology is considered primitive by galactic standards. Katie didn't understand all the big words, but she understood that he was being mean to her. She felt her face get hot. I'm not being primitive. The shapes do have feelings. You're just not paying attention. Katie, her mother said gently, let's not argue with our guests. But Katie was upset now. She had been watching the puzzle for days, and she knew she was right about the shapes having feelings. She stared hard at the puzzle, wishing she could. Prove it got as she watched. Something amazing happened. All the shapes in the puzzle suddenly changed color to bright red, the angry color. They began moving faster and bumping into each other. The whole puzzle looked angry, just like Katie felt. "Remarkable," Dr. Rodriguez whispered. "The artifact is responding to emotional stimuli." Deep Thought Xeris stared at the puzzle with his mouth open. In 40 years of study, he had never seen. The shapes all change color at the same time. This is impossible. The energy patterns do not respond to biological emotional states. Apparently they do, Dr. Rodriguez said. Writing furiously on her tablet, Katie took a deep breath and tried to calm down. As she did, the shapes in the puzzle slowly changed from red to softer colors. The blue ones came over to comfort the red ones, just like friends would do when someone was upset. "How did you that?" Deep Thought Xeris asked, sounding amazed for the first time since Katie had met him. "I didn't do anything special," Katie said. "I just felt upset, and they felt upset too. When I got calm, they got calm." Deep Thought Xeris looked at his assistants, then back at Katie. "This changes everything we thought we knew about the artifact. If it responds to emotional states rather than logical input, then maybe the precursors weren't like modern galactic species," Dr. Rodriguez finished. "Maybe they were more like humans, emotional and intuitive instead of purely logical." That evening, Katie and her family were invited to a big dinner with all the important delegates from different worlds. Katie had to wear her best dress and promised to be extra good. The dining hall was huge, with tables arranged in a big circle. Each table was designed for different types of aliens, some tall, some short, some that lived in water tanks. Jake was nervous because this was an important social event. If the other delegates liked the Morrison family, it might help humanity's chances of joining the galactic community. If things went badly, it could hurt their chances forever. Katie sat between her parents and tried to eat the strange alien food without making faces. Some of it was pretty good, but some of it tasted like eating a plant from their garden back home. "So, Ambassador Morrison," said Krell Vox from across the table, "we hear your offspring has been studying the precursor artifact." All conversation at nearby tables stopped. Everyone turned to look at Katie, who suddenly felt very small. "Katie has been observing the puzzle." "Yes," Jake said carefully. "How fascinating," said High Resonance Thrum, the crystal being. The walls vibrated a little when he talked. "And what has the young human concluded from her observations?" Katie looked at her father, who nodded for her to answer. "I think the shapes have feelings," she said in a small voice. "And I think they're lonely because no one has talked to them in a really long time." Several aliens made sounds that might have been laughing, but not in a nice way. An insect-like being called High Voice Click Click spoke up. "The human child believes inanimate objects possess emotional states." How very typical of their species' confusion between reality and imagination. Katie felt her cheeks turn red. "It's not imagination. They really do have feelings." "Of course they do, little one," said Blue Nin, a delegate who looked like he was made of water. "And I suppose next you will tell us that stars have feelings too." "Actually," Katie said, getting braver, "maybe they do. How would we know if we never tried to find out?" This caused more sounds that might have been laughter. Senator Johnson, who was sitting at another table, looked like he wanted to disappear. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," Krell Vox said. To the other delegates, "Humans assign emotional significance to everything around them. They cannot separate feelings from facts. How can such a species be trusted with important galactic decisions?" "Perhaps," said Deep Thought Xeris, who had been quiet until now, We should not be so quick to dismiss different ways of thinking. Everyone turned to look at the mentary scientist. In the galactic community, his opinion carried a lot of weight because his people were known for their intelligence. Earlier today, Deep Thought Zeris continued, a human child caused a precursor artifact to exhibit behaviors I have never seen in 40 years of study. Her emotional approach produced results that pure logic could not achieve. The dinner got very quiet. High-resonance thrones crystals flashed different colors. Are you suggesting that primitive emotional thinking might be superior to advanced logical analysis? I am suggesting, Deep Thought Zeris said slowly, that different types of problems might require different types of minds to solve them. High voice. Click-Click's antennae twitched. But emotional thinking is chaotic and unpredictable. It leads to poor decisions and irrational behavior. Sometimes, agreed Deep Thought Zeris, but it also leads to creativity and intuitive leaps that pure logic cannot make. Perhaps the precursors designed their puzzle to require both types of thinking working together. Katie listened to all this talk about thinking and logic and emotions. She didn't understand why the aliens thought having feelings was bad. Feelings helped her know when people were sad, so she could cheer them up. Feelings helped her know when something was beautiful, so she could enjoy it. Feelings made everything more interesting. I don't think feelings are bad, Katie said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Feelings help us care about things. If you don't care about something, why would you try to solve it? The dining hall got very quiet again. All the aliens stared at the little human girl who had just challenged thousands of years of galactic thinking with one simple question. Blue Nin spoke first. The child asks an interesting question. Why do we seek to solve the precursor puzzle? Is it not because we care about learning and discovery? Caring is not the same as emotion, Kralvok said, but he didn't sound as sure as before. Isn't it? Katie asked. When you care about something, don't you feel happy when it goes well and sad when it doesn't? The aliens looked at each other uncertainly. No one seemed to know how to answer that question, Dr. Ben Parker, who had been quiet during the whole dinner, finally spoke. If I may, he said, I'm a child psychologist, and I've been that night. Katie couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the dinner and how some of the aliens had laughed at her. She knew she was right about the shapes having feelings, but no one believed her except Dr. Rodriguez and maybe Deep Thought Zeris. She got up quietly and looked out their window at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, where people understood that feelings were important. Here on the station, everyone thought feelings made you weak and silly. I'll show them, Katie whispered to herself. I'll prove that the shapes have feelings. Very quietly, she put on her clothes and shoes. She knew she wasn't supposed to leave their rooms alone, especially at night, but this was important. She had to try to solve the puzzle and show everyone that humans weren't just emotional and weak. The hallways were very quiet at night. Most of the aliens were sleeping or doing whatever they did instead of sleeping. The lights were dimmer too, which made everything look mysterious and a little scary. But Katie was brave, and she kept walking toward the lower levels. When she got to the ancient chamber, she was surprised to find Zix waiting there. Small human, Zix said, you should not be here alone at night. Zix, how did you know I was coming? I have been monitoring your biometric patterns since you arrived, Zix explained. Your stress levels indicated you might attempt something irregular. Katie felt a little embarrassed that Zix had figured out her plan. I have to try to solve the puzzle, Zix. I have to show them that I'm right about the shapes having feelings. Zix's screened face showed a worried expression. This could be dangerous, small human. The artifact contains unknown energies. But you'll help me, right? Katie asked, looking up at her robot friend with hopeful eyes. Zix was quiet for a long moment. Then his screen showed a smiley face. I will monitor your safety, but if there is any danger, we must leave immediately. Katie hugged Zix's metal leg. Thank you. You're the best friend ever. They walked up to the energy barrier that covered the window. Katie pressed her hands against it and looked at the puzzle inside. The shapes were moving more slowly at night, like they were sleepy too. Hello, Katie said softly to the shapes. It's me again. I know you can hear me. Some of the shapes seemed to turn toward her voice. A few of them changed to brighter colors. I need your help, Katie continued. All the grown-ups think humans are too emotional to be part of their group. But I think emotions are good things. I think emotions help us understand each other better. More shapes began to glow brighter. The whole puzzle seemed to be paying attention to her now. Zix, Katie said, can you record everything that happens? I want to show Dr. Rodriguez tomorrow. Already recording, small human. Katie took a deep breath and tried to think about the puzzle differently. Instead of seeing it as a big, complicated machine, she tried to see it as a friend who needed help. You're lonely, aren't you? She said to the shapes, you've been here for thousands of years, and everyone who comes to see you just wants to solve you like a math problem. But you're not a math problem. You're something alive and beautiful. The shapes began moving faster. Colors swirled through them like rainbows. Katie could feel excitement coming from them, like they were happy that someone finally understood. I don't know how to open the door, Katie said, but maybe you do. Will you show me? Suddenly, symbols began appearing in the air around the shapes. They were written in light, floating like holograms. Katie couldn't read them because they were in the precursor language, but somehow she understood what they meant. The symbols were showing her how to feel the puzzle, not how to think about it. They showed emotions as colors and sounds and movements. They showed how feelings could connect different parts of the puzzle together. Oh, Katie said, understanding flooding through her. You don't want to be solved with math. You want to be understood with feelings. She closed her eyes and tried to feel what the puzzle was feeling. She felt loneliness from thousands of years of being alone. She felt curiosity about the people who came to visit. She felt hope that someday someone would understand. Katie opened her heart to all those feelings and sent back feelings of her own. She sent friendship and kindness and love. She sent her own curiosity about the universe and her hope that different kinds of people could be friends. The puzzle responded like a flower opening to sunlight. All the shapes began to dance together, spinning and swirling in patterns of pure joy. The colors became so bright that Katie had to squint, and something amazing happened. The energy barrier over the window began to fade. The ancient door slowly slid open with a sound like singing crystals. Incredible, Zix said, his voice filled with wonder. The chamber has been sealed for 3,000 years. Katie stepped inside, feeling like she was entering a magical place. The shapes floated all around her now, close enough to touch. They were warm and friendly, like floating pets made of light. Hello, she said to them. I'm Katie. Thank you for letting me in. The shapes swirled around her in a dance of welcome. One of them, a golden sphere, came very close to her face. When it touched her forehead, Katie suddenly understood everything. She saw the precursors, the ancient people who had built this puzzle. They looked a little like humans, but made of light instead of flesh. They had lived long ago when the galaxy was young, and they had been both logical and emotional, both smart and kind. They had built the puzzle as a test, but not the kind of test the galactic species thought it was. It wasn't meant to test intelligence or mathematical ability. It was meant to test whether a species could combine thinking and feeling, logic and love. The precursors had disappeared, not because they died, but because they had evolved beyond the need for physical bodies. They had become beings of pure energy and emotion, traveling through dimensions that other species couldn't even imagine. But before they left, They wanted to make sure that other species could learn what they had learned. That true wisdom came from balancing the mind and the heart. Katie understood all of this in just a moment, the way understanding sometimes comes in dreams. The golden sphere showed her how to activate the puzzle's final sequence. She reached out with both her hands and her heart, touching several shapes at once. As she did, the entire chamber filled with brilliant light. Information flowed through. The light, knowledge about faster travel through space, new forms of energy, ways to heal planets that had been damaged, and most importantly, how different species could work together by combining their different types of intelligence. The light grew so bright that alarms began going off all over the station. Katie could hear footsteps running in the hallways above. Soon, everyone would come to see what was happening. "Small human," Zix said urgently. "Many beings are approaching. You should prepare yourself." Katie nodded, still glowing a little from her contact with the puzzle. She felt different now, like she had grown up years in just a few minutes. She understood things about the universe that she couldn't have understood before. The first person to arrive was Dr. Rodriguez, who came running down the hallway in her pajamas. When she saw Katie standing inside the ancient chamber, surrounded by dancing lights, her mouth fell open. "Katie, how did you get in there? Are you all right?" "I'm fine," Katie said, and her voice sounded older somehow. "I solved it, Dr. Rodriguez. I solved the puzzle." More people came running. Jake and Lisa, Deep Thought Zeris, Krelvox, High Resonance Thrum, and dozens of other aliens. They all stopped at the entrance to the chamber and stared in amazement. The puzzle was still active, still dancing with light and color. But now it was also projecting information into the air. Star charts, scientific formulas, blueprints for amazing machines, and instructions for technologies that no living species possessed. "This is impossible," Deep Thought Zeris whispered. "How did a child accomplish what our greatest minds could not?" Katie walked toward them, the floating shapes following her like loyal friends. "Because you are trying to solve it with just your minds," she said simply. "But the precursors made it, so you have to use your heart too." She looked around at all the aliens staring at her. The precursors weren't like you. They weren't just logical or just emotional. They were both at the same time. And they wanted to find other species who could be both too. Jake ran into the chamber and hugged his daughter tightly. "Katie, you scared us. You could have been hurt." "I'm okay, Daddy," Katie said, hugging him back. "And I proved that humans aren't weak. We're just different. And different can be good." As the news of Katie's breakthrough spread through the station, representatives from every galactic species came to see the ancient chamber. The little human girl, who they had thought was just a problem, had accomplished something that would change the galaxy forever. But Katie was tired now. Solving the puzzle had taken a lot out of her, and she was still just 8 years old. As her parents carried her back to their rooms, she looked over her father's shoulder at the aliens following them. They weren't laughing at her anymore. They were looking at her with respect and wonder, the way people look at someone who has done something truly amazing. For the first time since arriving at the station, Katie felt like maybe humans really did belong among the stars. She looked out the classroom window at the sky, where ships from dozens of worlds came and went from Earth's new spaceport. Humanity had taken its place among the stars, not through conquest or superior technology, but by proving that empathy and emotional intelligence were just as valuable as any other form of wisdom. "Dr. Rodriguez," Katie said, "do you think there are more puzzles out there waiting to be solved?" "I'm sure there are," Dr. Rodriguez replied. "And I have a feeling that your generation of students will be the ones to solve them, together." Katie nodded and turned back to her classroom, full of young beings from across the galaxy. They were learning not just science and mathematics and history, but something much more important, that differences weren't obstacles to overcome, but gifts to be shared. Outside, the stars waited with their infinite mysteries, and Katie knew that whatever. Cha. The next morning, Katie woke up to find their rooms filled with flowers and gifts from aliens all over the station. There were crystal formations that sang beautiful songs, plants that changed colors when you touched them, and small devices that made pictures in the air. "What's all this?" Katie asked, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Congratulations, gifts," her mother said with a big smile. "Everyone wants to honor what you did last night." Jake was sitting at their table, reading messages on his tablet. His face looked amazed and happy. "Katie, do you know what you've accomplished? The precursor technology you unlocked could change everything. Faster space travel, clean energy, medical advances that could help billions of people." Katie nodded, though she was still too young to fully understand how big this was. The puzzle just wanted someone to be nice to it. There was a soft knock at their door. When Jake opened it, he found Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Ben Parker waiting outside, both carrying tablets and looking very excited. "Good morning," Dr. Rodriguez said. "Katie, would you mind if we asked you some questions about what happened in the ancient chamber?" Katie sat down with them and tried to explain what it had felt like to solve the puzzle. It was hard to put into words because it hadn't been like solving a math problem or answering questions on a test. It had been more like making friends with something that had been lonely for a very long time. The shapes weren't really angry or sad, Katie explained. They were just copying the feelings of the people who came to see them. When scientists came feeling frustrated and impatient, the shapes felt that way too. But when I came feeling curious and friendly, they felt that way instead. Dr. Parker nodded as he took notes. So the puzzle was designed to mirror emotional states. That's why logical approaches failed. They were trying to solve it without engaging emotionally. The precursors believed that true intelligence required both logic and emotion working together, Katie said, repeating what the golden sphere had shown her. They wanted to find species who understood that. Dr. Rodriguez looked amazed. An 8-year-old child has just solved one of the greatest mysteries in galactic history. "I'm not special," Katie said. "Any human could have done it. We just think about things differently than other aliens do." That afternoon, Katie received an invitation that no human had ever gotten before. The Galactic Senate wanted her to speak to the full assembly of delegates. She would be the youngest being in galactic history to address the Senate. Katie felt nervous as she walked into the huge Senate chamber with her parents. The room was enormous, with seats arranged in circles that went up and up like a giant stadium. Thousands of aliens from hundreds of different worlds were there. To hear her speak. In the center of the room was a small platform with a microphone. Katie had to walk down there all by herself while everyone watched her. Her legs felt shaky, but she remembered how brave she had felt in the ancient chamber, and that helped her keep walking. When she reached the microphone, she had to stand on a box so she would be tall enough to reach it. The entire chamber was quiet, waiting to hear what she would say. "Hello," Katie said, and her voice echoed through the huge room. "My name is Katie Morrison, and I'm 8 years old. 3 days ago, most of you thought humans were too emotional and weak to join your group. You thought bringing a child to important meetings was silly." She paused and looked around at all the alien faces staring at her. "You were wrong about humans being weak, but you are right that we're emotional. We feel things very strongly, and we think that's a good thing." Deep Thought Zaris stood up in his section. "Young Katie, can you explain how your emotional approach succeeded where our logical methods failed?" Katie thought about how to answer that. When you tried to solve the puzzle, you were thinking about it like a machine or a math problem. But the precursors made it alive, in a way. It had feelings and needed to be understood, not just solved. High-resonance Thrums crystals flashed different colors as he spoke. Are you suggesting that emotions are superior to logic? No, Katie said. I think both are important. Logic helps us understand how things work. Emotions help us understand why things matter. The precursors used both together, and that's why. They were so wise. Krelvox stood up next. But emotions are unpredictable. They lead to poor decisions and conflicts between species. Katie nodded. Sometimes they do. But emotions also help us care about each other and want to help each other. If you only use logic, you might make smart decisions, but you won't care. If those decisions hurt people. An alien Katie had never seen before stood up. It looked like a walking tree with eyes in its bark. Young human, the precursor knowledge you have unlocked could give your species great power. How do we know humans will use this power wisely? This was a hard question, and Katie thought about it carefully before answering. You don't know for sure, she said honestly, but I think the precursors designed the puzzle so that only species who care about others could solve it. If humans were mean and selfish, the puzzle wouldn't have opened for me. Blue Nin raised a watery appendage. What do you believe the precursors wanted us to learn from their test? Katie smiled, because this was the easiest question of all. They wanted us to learn that being different is good. Every species here is good at different things. The Mentheri are really smart with numbers and logic. The Vorthans make beautiful music with their voices. The Zephyrians are great at flying through space. Humans are good at understanding feelings and caring about others. She looked around the chamber again. Instead of thinking that different means wrong, we should think that different means helpful. If we all work together and use our different abilities, we can solve problems that none of us could solve alone. The chamber was very quiet for a moment. Then something unexpected happened. Deep Thought Xeris began to applaud, clapping his long, thin hands together. Soon, high-resonance thrum was vibrating in a pattern that was the Vorthan way of clapping. Then Blue Nin made rippling sounds, and Krelvox whistled in harmonies within moments. The entire Galactic Senate was applauding in hundreds of different ways. Some clicked, some hummed, some flashed lights, and some made sounds Katie had never heard before. But they were all showing approval and respect for what she had said. Senator Johnson, who was sitting in the human section, looked like he couldn't believe what was happening. The little girl he had wanted to send home had just received a standing ovation from the most powerful beings in the galaxy. When the applause finally died down, the Senate speaker stood up. She was a very old alien who looked like she was made of silver metal. The Galactic Senate has heard the words of Katie Morrison of Earth. We have seen the wisdom she has demonstrated and the knowledge she has unlocked for all species to share. Speaker's voice rang through the chamber. It is the decision of this body that humanity shall be granted full membership in the Galactic Senate, with all the rights and responsibilities that come with that honor. The chamber erupted in celebration again. Jake and Lisa were crying happy tears in the human section. Dr. Rodriguez was jumping up and down. Even Zix, who was watching from the observation deck, had happy symbols scrolling across his screen face. But Katie felt something even better than the applause and celebration. She felt like she belonged here, among the stars, representing not just humans, but the idea that different kinds of thinking could work together to solve any problem. 3 months later, Katie stood in a very different place, a classroom on Earth, where children from many different worlds were learning together. The Intergalactic Academy for Integrated Learning had been built using precursor technology, and it was the first school where young beings from different species could study together. Remember, Katie told her mixed class of human Mentheri, Vorthan and Zephyrian children, there's no one right way to solve a problem. Maya's math skills and Tyler's creativity and Zix Prime's logic patterns and Harmony Song's musical thinking can all work together. She watched as the children worked. In groups, each bringing their species' strengths to shared projects. A young Mentheri was teaching a human girl advanced mathematics, while the human showed the Mentheri how to paint pictures that expressed emotions. A little Vorthen was composing music with a Zephyrian, who contributed wind-song harmonies, Doctor. Rodriguez, who was now the Academy's director, came up behind Katie. Any regrets about becoming the most famous 8-year-old in galactic history? Katie grinned. Nope. Though I do miss when solving puzzles was just for fun.